I'm Rick Collins, this is Jim Stewart, and we're off the bench. Breaking news today, there's been a federal investigation ongoing for a couple of years now. Charges of fraud and corruption against 10 people involving multiple universities. We weren't even planning about talking on this subject for a while.
So sorry if it's a little thrown together, but we're getting details as they come out. This is just another in a long line of scandals that have been going on for a while now in college football or college sports. It's usually football, but now it's starting to bleed into the other sports as well. But this is in basketball.
Yes.
And it's not only, and there's 10 people that they're federally looking at right now.
Yeah.
And
several have been arrested already.
Yep.
In fact.
And a lot are assistant coaches and a few head coaches. So go over the details as it is right now.
So right now, coaches named in the documents, excuse me if I'm reading because this information is so new to us, is Auburn's Chuck Person, Oklahoma State's Lamont Evans, Arizona's Book Richardson, and USC's Tony Bland, just to name 4 of the 10 people that have been arrested, and those are the coaches that are involved. It looks very widespread. It involves people from sport brand companies. It involves assistant coaches. It involves, athletic directors. The whole process of influence on college athletics, on players. This is what they're talking about here, is that there's money going into college programs to influence players on who they should sign with as an athletic brand, and also what professional teams, they should look at.
And what's going to happen now is there's going to be a massive push after the scandal saying, see, no matter what we do, these kids need to get paid because they're getting paid whether or not we like it. And I really think that that is the wrong way to go because it'll only get worse. Yeah. If you start allowing these kids to get paid, then they're going to want more money and more money and more money. And then after a while, these kids will start getting paid as much as NFL players with the top recruits. Not all of them, but the top recruits. And I don't think money has any place in college sports. And I know a lot of players have come out saying, well, I didn't get much going into my college, getting my scholarship. I had no money to eat and all that. Well, that's a little bit of a fabrication. These players that come in, they get access to the cafeteria 24/7. Maybe it's not the ideal place to take someone out on a date with, but they get food, they get board, they get, every other student outside of these scholarship students have to pay around $100,000 or more to have a 4-year education. And these players that have scholarships do not. It's not our fault that these kids are now going to the NFL, that this is a stepping stone, stone to the NFL or to the NBA.
Right.
So the real question becomes, how do we prevent this from happening in the future? Are we really going to start cracking down?
I think the problem is you can't. We've been trying to prevent this for so many years now, but this started out in the 1950s. We were looking back, and
we had to cut down the list. It was so long.
The point shaving scandal back in 1951 that involved 30 players from 7 different schools, including the City College in New York. You look at the 1970s and the point shaving scandal at Boston College. It involved some low-life figures, what they believe were the mob, and then you look at the
Pete Carroll the Pete Carroll USC intern scandal or media. They were now putting kids in touch with managers and agents before they were allowed to.
1986 with SMU getting the death penalty for having a slush fund where boosters were paying players. This goes back forever, and it keeps going on. We're not seeing an end to it in my mind, and I don't think there will be an end to it. I think what we need to do is decide, if we're going to pay these players, how are we going to do it? Because they're getting paid. There's no question about that. They're getting paid. We're seeing it. Well, through the history of sports, we're seeing it.
But these schools can now say, we are not the ones paying these players. Publicly they can say that. 1986 with the SMU, the boosters were playing. So the school said they knew, but the school was not paying the players, it was the boosters. So what happens now is you open up Pandora's box, because then even the obscure sport on both sides, on the women's and the men's, are going to go, they get paid, I need to get paid. And then what do you do? How do you discern how much money goes to who? Is it based on how much revenue is generated from those sports? Is it based on how priority an athlete you are.
Honestly,
What is the
it's a nightmare for college sports. I think eventually we're going to see.
It'll turn into lawsuits.
It
will turn into lawsuits.
Start getting paid, and like you said, I think it does open Pandora's box, but I don't see an end to it. I don't see a way we can get around it.
And it's not just, the scandal won't be if we open up to paying these athletes. It will not just be on the fact that how much are these players getting paid. Title IX will get involved.
Yeah.
Because then, whether we like it or not, women's sports do not draw the revenue that
Correct.
men's sports do, especially football and
Generally, yes.
basketball. Yes, generally, unless you're a UConn or something where you have a very successful, Tennessee, you have a very successful women's program.
Right.
But outside of that, it doesn't. And it's not fair for them to get left out because this other side is
they are
established.
committed as a academic and an athlete,
Yeah.
just as much as
Yep,
the men's players
they
are.
get all the same benefits currently
Correct.
as their counterparts
So what
on the other
happens
side.
when we start paying
So
$1
when
million
yes.
to the men's football team at UT?
And then they pay $10,000 to the women's swimming team,
Right.
or the women's lacrosse team, or even the men's swimming and men's lacrosse, because those don't draw people either.
Absolutely.
So what ends up happening then is you're not going to just have lawsuits because of money. It's going to be lawsuits on not just sex but race, and it'll just open up a Pandora's box of these schools will not get out of the courtroom.
Yeah,
They
and
just won't.
Let's look back at the stats from this. They started in 2015 looking into this. Louisville's already come out and denied the allegations. Guys have already, Lamont Evans was already arrested.
These are not small players. These are not
No.
small names. Chuck Persons.
Yeah, Chuck Person,
Yeah,
yes.
Person he played in the NBA. He was an NBA
Yeah.
star, and now he's the coach of Auburn.
But I even looking at who the names are.
I'd love to see what
but
Chuck.
This involves the director of global sports marketing at Adidas. How deep is this? Because this isn't just 10 people. I mean, if you're involving the global sports marketing person from Adidas, you're talking about at least 100 people just inside Adidas that would
And it'll go all the way to the
have
top.
some influence.
It'll
on
go all the way to the top because that guy is not spending the kind of money he's spending on these players without these the upper management.
How many
knowing.
other schools are we going to find out are involved in this? I would be surprised if it's not a lot more.
Well, this is a dirty subject because as much as these schools like to think that they're clean and say that they're clean, most aren't.
Yeah.
Most do something along these lines, whether we like it or not, whether we're hardcore alumni or not, and you support your team or not. All of them do it to some extent.
Yeah.
Whether they're offering incentives, whether they're offering benefits, whether they're offering cash.
Or you just have your players going to Rocks for Jocks, or
Yes.
basically a class that doesn't really exist.
Or if it's, like I said, benefits. So like if you went to USC, I bet you that there are alums from USC that could get you into concerts, that can get you into clubs, that could get you. Those are all incentives.
Yes.
And what these teams are is the schools themselves know what's going on, but they're not doing it themselves. They're going through their boosters. They're going through their alumni, so they can go, we didn't know.
And sometimes they're actually telling the boosters to stop doing it, but the boosters are going around the back of the school, involving the school in a way. There's no way that the school can control all of it, honestly.
No. And so, like we said, it's a catch-22. They either they keep fighting it, and every couple years another big scandal will come out, or they pay the players, which will open up a whole new set of problems. And those problems will never go away. So what happens is you've got to learn, you're going to understand the fact that you are going to run into problems every couple years. Or do you want a problem continuously all the time? There is no in between. Because at this point, we have become so politically charged in schools that now these kids and these new generations, a lot of them feel that they're entitled. They go, I played football at this and I got this. Look how much these kids that are coming out 1 year into college and now going into the NBA, they're making millions of dollars. I deserve this. And it's not just not fair for these kids when they go into the real life. It's not fair for the people that did it the right way in the past. It's not fair to the alums from the 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s who had to come in and do it the right way. Yes, we're never going to get away from the fact that some players are going to get special benefits, whether it's money or influence or
So really, looking at this long term, there is one way to go around it, and the one way to go around it is to say that any athlete from high school can go directly into their profession of choice without having to go to college.
And in
That's
some
the only
sports,
way to do
but
it,
in some
right?
sports that works. Basketball it works. Football it does not, because football and track and field and all that, they haven't developed enough as a human being to be able to compete with the 20s and 30-year-old women and men at those sports. They just can't. They're not physically developed enough. Basketball is a different story. Basketball is, for some reason, some of the top stars of all time came straight out of high school.
Yeah.
I just get nervous. I think the other way we do it is we need to make it a federal crime to tamper with colleges. Alumni, you can donate to the school, just like building stadiums and stuff. Alumni can do that unless you interact with the school in a certain way through a certain process. I think that there should be federal charges if you put money or it's different than saying you go to you live in a certain community and you try to push a kid
But
towards
they've worked
going to a
their
school.
way around this. The mob has been involved in some of these scandals. You've got Ponzi scheme guys who are already doing federal illegal activities involved in some of this. So I don't know that ends it, because it's kind of like the people who murder somebody. They know they're committing a crime that's going to put them away for life, but they still do it. And so you're not necessarily saying that by making it a federal crime, you're going to limit that it's never going to happen. It's still going to occur. It might go through different avenues, but it's still going to occur. I think.
So really, we're going to just
not a great way.
There
of,
is no.
of getting
It's a
around it.
catch-22. No matter which way you go, no matter which way you go, there is no right answer to this.
Amateur sports is a problem right now, and it's because nobody wants to be amateur.
And it's
These
really
guys,
going
once
to
they
start.
get to college, they want to be a professional player. They
And
want
it
to
is
make
starting
money.
to go down into high schools. And
Especially
I don't mean.
when there's so much money out there to be made in
Yes.
professional sports.
But what's the sad part is the next thing we know, we're going to start. We've seen the scandals going all the way down into high schools.
Yeah.
Even a local star like Deion Sanders had a problem with his
Recruiting players into the district to
Yes.
play for his team. Yeah.
Yes, and they were paying these players to come in to help
Yeah.
them with their rent. And it's not in public schools; it's in private.
Yes.
So what we need to do is I think we really need to come together as a governing body, whether it's schools or the government or whoever, and we really need to sit down and figure out this problem. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be short term. We're not going to have an answer in the next couple years. We really need to sit down and spend a couple years putting together a right plan of action against stuff like this.
Again, we're talking about the 10 individuals that have been involved in a federal case of fraud and corruption over the last couple of years that they've been investigating. And, we're talking about it.
It's really
This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last.
No. And I know people are going to either agree or disagree with what we're saying, but it is a problem. It's our take on how this problem should be done, but doesn't mean we're wrong.
No.
There are going to be people who say, well, there's nothing we can do here, so why even do anything? Well, because you don't let this stuff lie.
Yeah.
You can't, these are our children, these are our youth that are getting affected. And so when we get back, maybe we're going to go a little bit more into this.
We'll calm down, and I think we'll finish this up, but we want to get into a Monday Night Football review.
Yeah, and then high school after that.
Next.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
we really felt this topic needed a little bit more into this segment, even though this was supposed to be our Monday
Night football review.
We do need to make the point that colleges, boosters, organizations do a lot of good for a lot of kids.
I mean, if without them, the society is really lost. I mean, it's an important part of our education.
Yeah,
program.
and these boosters do allow a lot of help into getting these facilities up to snuff when it comes to the way, the technology, the size and the scope it needs to be able to support students now. But what we're trying to say is this is a cancer within our education system. Are these people who, like you said, see possibilities to make money and exploit not only colleges, because colleges are looking for money to be able to pay their, pay the different growth and the different plans that they have for their universities. Yeah. And the kids are looking there going, I have no money in my pocket. I'd like some money in my pocket. So what they're doing is these people are taking advantage of two systems that are maybe not desperate, but that are not looking away, are not going to look away from money, especially if they don't think it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And right now, we need to make sure that we can separate good boosters and people who are helping their colleges, because college loyalty is important. But we've got to figure out a way to get these cancers out of the system, and that's what we were talking about before.
And so getting into the Monday Night Football review, the Cowboys played last night, and honestly, that's the Cowboys team I wanted to see. And we didn't see it last week, and maybe that was just a blip on the radar for this season, because the Cowboys team we saw last night against another very good defense, obviously not nearly as good as Denver, but very good in Arizona. They were fantastic last night.
And they really did a lot of what we were talking about. Dak had to use his legs.
Yeah.
The offense is not what it was last year. He needs to be a little bit more mobile, and that's what he did. He scored one running, and it was a designed run.
Yes.
They made everybody think that Zeke was taking it, and he went in for 20 yards for a touchdown with a flip at the end, which was impressive. And he did have a long touchdown throw. But I'm still not convinced that he is nothing but
We're never going to convince you on
No,
this.
if he can do this 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I will be convinced and I will eat my own words. But I really want to see more than 1 or 2 downfield throws. I want to see him attempt it. Because he only had 183 yards throwing the ball.
And I liked what Dak did, and Dak did what they needed him to do to win the game. In fact, I believe he went over and beyond what they needed him to do to win the game. But what I was most impressed with yesterday night was Zeke running the ball, and especially after a bad week of running the ball, but also a bad week in terms of how he looked on the field. He looked a lot better on the field. His commitment to winning was there last night, and also the defense. That was the other piece that we were worried about. Man, giving up that many touchdowns to Trevor Siemian last week, that was ugly. Yeah, and this week they came out and they shut Carson Palmer down.
6 sacks. And Lawrence had 3 of them.
Yeah.
Lawrence now has 6.5 sacks on the season. He's this leading sack master of the NFL this season. And I really think that they have tools on this defense to have something special, at least in the front 4.
Yeah.
We've always talked about having problems in the back.
Concern is the secondary right now.
Secondary is a concern. But if they can continue to move Dak, to use his athletic ability, to maybe start putting wide receivers in motion, I think this offense will open up a little bit more, because as you could tell in the second half of last night's game, when Dak started being able to have success throwing the ball, maybe not downfield, but further downfield where yards after a catch, they were starting to get people open.
Passing.
Yeah, mid-range passing, which is his specialty.
Yes.
The running game started to open up.
Yes.
Because in the first half of last night, Zeke, again, did not have a very good running,
No, they got stuffed. They were 3 and outs, like 3 out of the first 4 possessions. Did not look good starting out the game. But the defense stepped up and made plays and allowed the offense more opportunities. And that was huge, because the defense did not allow the offense any opportunities last weekend.
And I think there was one performance that, it wasn't in it wasn't on the winning side, but I really think the performance deserves some praise, was Carson Palmer. He took a beating, and he did not stop throwing the ball downfield. He didn't stop trying. He had 11 hits and 6 sacks, Most quarterbacks would be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the sort of hits that really hurt Troy Aikman in his first year. I understand this is not his first year, but this is the kind of beating Carson Palmer's getting. And Derek Carr.
Well, and if you look at Carson
David
Palmer,
Carr, sorry, David Carr.
Yeah, David Carr with the Texans.
Yeah.
You look at Carson Palmer's career; it's been a long one. He's gotten to the point where the expectation is he cannot get out of the pocket and move. So he's got to do his damage from the pocket, and when the pocket's collapsing on you, like it did last night, that's going to be trouble for them. And he still made it happen.
And he took it like a man. He stepped up where a lot of people don't like stepping up into the pocket. In today's NFL, the top quarterbacks are the ones who can climb the pocket and throw in with pressure in their face.
And certainly having Larry Fitzgerald downfield doesn't hurt
Oh,
either.
that catch on third down,
incredible.
he took it away from a defensive from that defensive
he's been like
guy.
that his entire career. Let's get back to the Cowboys real quick. Zeke. He did not get 100 yards. So, you could say you're disappointed with not getting to 100 yards, but Arizona's run defense is still top 10 in the league. I think he's going to be fine going forward, but there's an issue with this offensive line that could cause problems going down the line because the only way they were really able to get him going was the way we talked about it. They needed to get him in space, get him the ball where he could get some momentum going because just
wasn't normal running.
Trying to run the ball up the middle was not working at all.
And if it's not going to work, they need to get a fullback. They need to get someone to help him open up some holes if that's the way they're going to go.
It took 2 or 3 tight ends in the game, along with the offensive line, to really get him going. Once they got him going, and then at the end of the game, they're trying to salt the clock, and he was doing a great job of doing that. But they had already worn down the Arizona defense. My problem is that first half, when he can't get all those yards, and they're having to put 3 tight ends in, I don't know if that says anything about Zeke, but it certainly says something about the offensive line.
What did we expect, though, really? Our right tackle for the last 5-6 years retired. And we never talked about him because he did his job. He didn't get beat a lot, and he didn't pancake many people, but he did his job, and he's very good at it. Then we took away our left guard. So we basically gutted our offensive line. We took away the right most important position and the left guard, which that's one of the most important internal offensive line position is left guard, especially when you have a right-handed quarterback, because that's still his blind side.
Right.
So if it had been both right side positions, they could have still run left. But now you've got weaknesses on both sides of the offensive line. You've got a right tackle who is not really known to be a right tackle. He is not
he just
equipped.
moved over there.
Yes, he's a left-handed guy who is now learning the right tackle position, and you've got a left tackle who came from Arizona in Cooper.
Left guard.
Left guard, and he really is starting to again have to adjust because it is a different system. You have to get used to it. But until this offensive line turns into the amazing thing it was last year, we really have to come to grips with Zeke's a good running back. No one is going to not say that. But maybe he isn't the unbelievable superstar we saw last year because that line was so good.
Yeah.
Maybe we've got to get used to the fact that he's still going to have 100-yard games. He's still probably going to have almost 200-yard games, but they're not going to be a consistency like they were last year. He averaged 101 yards. Last year, as a whole, he averaged 101 yards. I don't think that's going to happen this year, and until they fix this line, it's not going to happen.
So the Cowboys, looking towards the rest of the season, this is a really important win for them because they lose this, they're down to 1-2. Philadelphia leading the division at 2-1. They're going to have to make up those games at some point. Their schedule gets a little bit easier as we move along, but they've still got to win a lot of games. And they have one of the toughest, if not the toughest schedule in the NFL.
Well, based on the beginning of the season and last year's player, like we've said at the beginning, we have no idea what's going on in the NFL right now. So here they could have the hardest schedule, or they could have an easy schedule based on what's going on.
Based on concerns at the beginning of the year, 2-1 is a really good record at this point for them.
You know, we were really scared that especially after the second game against the Denver Broncos, we were really scared that this team was not going to recover.
Yeah.
And regardless of what people think and the things that we've said, it could have been a lot worse, but this team is still a distracted team. This Zeke stuff, and I do believe the stuff that's happening off the field right now and that everybody knows about, but we're just, we'll let everybody else talk about. I think that is a distraction. I think people's minds aren't completely on football like they should be when it comes to players. And I think we're seeing that across the board. Maybe we're getting out of that now that the season's starting to really take off. But until all that's done, I think we're going to have to deal with unpredictable football.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, that's not bad.
No.
I like unpredictable football.
It's why Sunday was fun. I mean, despite the fact that you saw all these
Oh
bad
yeah, you were
teams
calling
come
me
out.
going, what is going on? And then it would hang up. Oh my God. That is the way fans start coming back.
Yeah.
It's not good for fantasy football. It's not good for, if you're someone who is betting.
Gambling, yes.
But it is great to be a fan because what you want is entertainment.
Yes.
And that was
And they
nothing
stepped
but
it up this
entertainment.
weekend, and last night was entertaining. Whether you're an Arizona Cardinal fan or a Dallas Cowboy fan, it was still entertaining football. There was chances for
If you made it
Arizona
through
to
the
come
first
back.
half.
It was 21-17. Arizona gets the ball back. They score a touchdown.
If they had kicked a field goal, they could have.
There's still opportunity there for them. So, even though the ended score was 28-17, we got exciting Monday Night Football. That's what football needs to do going forward because the first 2 weeks were bad.
Yes.
This weekend, a little bit saving their season for the NFL. Let's hope that we get another good weekend of football.
And I know I have been critical of Dak and Zeke, but I have to say that they are still babies in the form of NFL, years.
Yeah.
They're both sophomores. The last year was their rookie year. They had a great year. They're going to have to learn to take adversity, and Dak is doing a great job.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he's not a good quarterback. I'm not saying that he's not going to do a great job as a franchise quarterback. I just don't think it's fair for people all over the Metroplex, and you've heard it too, the next Troy Aikman,
Yeah.
the next Emmitt Smith, and the next Michael Irvin. These guys are not the triplets. They're just not.
Well, also it was exciting to see Dez get another touchdown, and we haven't mentioned Dez yet, but getting a touchdown, but the way he did it.
He muscled them well.
And the Cowboys found a way. This was the thing we talked about last week, is we just ran the same stuff over and over the entire game against Denver, and none of it worked. And we kept thinking, they've got to change the plan for these. Put Dez in different positions, run him across the formation, put him in a slot, find places for him to make plays. And they did that last night, finally.
Yeah, I think this team is not going to be able to win games off the back of the quarterback and the running back anymore. I think it's got to be a team effort now. The defense is going to hold them in games and win them games sometimes. It's not going to be the complete offensive juggernaut they were last year. And I think there is a real chance if we, and this is a reason why I've been negative, and you've heard me behind the scenes, I still think Dak's a good quarterback. But as long as these guys are not held to an unrealistic level of achievement in the triplets, remember, the triplets had to get to where they were. It took a couple years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let these guys develop into what they are. Stop putting names and
standards on
and
them.
standards on them that they are trying to drop Hall of Fame standards on these three players, and it's not fair. So all I've been doing by saying these guys are not what the triplets are is because they need to build their own brand. And not the baller brand, but they need to build their own brand, and I think they did a great job with a hard-fought victory last night because they could have easily lost. But they came back and they really held on to it on a defensive and offensive effort.
Yeah, really impressed all the way around. Even the special teams was not bad. I'd still like to see Ryan Switzer, I think, along with you, involved in the offense more, but
he's a weapon. Why not use him? He's a great weapon. He is fast. He did a lot of good things as a Tar Heel. I do not understand why they're holding back something. And maybe it's Cole Beasley is playing so well that they don't need him, but
we haven't seen Cole Beasley really involved in a lot of the offense. It's really been Terrence Williams and Jason Witten who have been a lot of the targets early on because Dez hadn't really been involved and Zeke's been struggling. But everybody's got to step up, and it looks like this week everybody stepped up.
This year is not going to be like 2016. They're going to have to grind through these games. They're not going to blow out people like they did last year. They're going to have to literally fight tooth and nail for every yard they get. These are not going to be easy games. These are not going to be fun games. Zeke is going to probably have a way lower average, but they're going to be hard-earned yards. They're going to be – I see him
Prepares
being –
him more for the playoffs.
If he can – and he'll get more yards because he's going to get more carries. But if he could be a Marshawn Lynch this year where he's just beating up the defense. And then if they have to put in Morris or they have to put in McFadden to give him breaks, that's fine. But he needs to be the sledgehammer now. He needs to make these defenses go, we want them to throw, because all we're doing is getting beat up. But when we get back, we will be talking high school football preview.
Very excited to talk to Matt Wixon, and we're gonna give you a preview of what's been a pretty amazing level of play for the Frisco High School so far this year. Reedy 4-0 in their second year of being varsity, and then Lone Star, a great match against Denton Ryan last Thursday night at the Star.
It was close, and
Really close.
and these are the top 2 teams in the DFW area. So all of that next.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? But now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
We've got a bunch of big games coming up in FISD for football, but let's go back real quick and look at the beginning of the season and what's happened so far. We've got several teams that are 4-0. We've got a Lone Star team that just played against Denton Ryan.
Right.
Huge matchup, Matt. What do you think as far as the beginning of the season, how these teams are matching up right now?
Well, I think it's interesting you mentioned we have a lot of 4-0 teams, but probably the most impressive game that any of the Frisco ISD teams have done so far was the loss. And that was Lone Star losing to Denton Ryan last week. And the reason for that is Denton Ryan, in our Dallas Morning News polls, Denton Ryan is number 1, Frisco Lone Star is number 2. And you're talking about probably the 2 best 5A teams in the area. And Lone Star went right down to the wire with them.
Yeah.
Denton Ryan was a state semifinalist last year. They're a big physical team. They got a great quarterback, Spencer Sanders, who's going to Oklahoma State. And I think a lot of people figured that Lone Star couldn't hang with them.
Yeah, in fact, we looked at the scoring before the game, and both teams were putting up in the mid-40s in points per game, and 28-21. And you said that they limited them to 75 rushing yards. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think Lone Star's defense was, the big takeaway in that is that Lone Star's defense can play smash mouth, can play with the big boys. They can do that kind of stuff up front. And it doesn't really surprise me, but we really didn't know until we saw it on the field what Lone Star could do this year. I knew Lone Star was going to be able to move the ball and score some points, which they did. Kirby Bennett is their star running back.
Right.
And, a lot of what they do is predicated on smashing the ball with him. They control the offense or control the clock with their offense. And they did that against Denton Ryan, and they were right there at the end. And so I think it bodes well for the future for them.
You also mentioned off camera that neither of these teams will not face each other in the playoffs. Kind of explain how that 5A system works right now.
Right. Yeah, in the University Interscholastic League, they have a Division I and a Division II for each class. The Frisco schools are in 5A. 6A is the largest. 5A is the second largest. And then once they have their 4 playoff teams, the 2 largest enrollments from each district, so we'll have 4 playoff teams from Frisco.
Okay.
The 2 largest enrollment schools, the Frisco schools that make the playoffs, go to Division I. The 2
Interesting.
smallest go to Division II. Yeah, it's every
So
year.
you don't even know. If you're
know.
a mid-range team, you don't know if you're going to be in the big 5A or the little 5A.
That's exactly right. A lot of them are towing each line, and depending upon who of their colleagues, if you want to call it, make it, that's what they could do. But in the case of Lone Star, they are the smallest enrollment by the UIL figures in their district. So they're going to go Division II.
Okay.
Denton Ryan is the largest in their district. They're going Division I. So they don't have to play them again in the playoffs, which made it like a perfect non-district game. It's like, hey, we can go out there, we can play another great team. They're not going to be learning anything from us that they're going to use against us later. It was perfect that way.
And a good opportunity for Lone Star to test their mettle, really, I guess, way in advance of getting into the playoffs. We're looking at them as a potential playoff team. What are they ranked right now in the area?
Well, we have them number 2. This is the Dallas Morning News rankings. Number 2 to Denton Ryan, number 1. And I haven't seen the state rankings yet this week, but they were state ranked number 9 last week. And I think that's a real comfortable position for them to be. I mean, rankings are rankings, you know. It's what you do on the field, but they have shown that they have the pieces to put together as the season goes along to make a nice playoff run. And I think once you get to the playoffs, it's all about getting hot, getting the right matchups.
Right.
And Lone Star's definitely got the pieces to make a good
With
run.
that defense and being able to control the clock with a great running back
Right.
like Kirby Bennett, they have a great opportunity in the playoffs. How about Reedy? How are they looking? They're only in their second year of varsity football.
Right.
What are the expectations for them?
Well, already I think they've probably exceeded a lot of people's expectations. Like you said, second year of varsity team, you're not expecting a lot of wins, and they're 4-0. They haven't played a lot of really tough teams,
Okay.
but that's part of what you do when you're a second year varsity program. You schedule for where your program's at.
Absolutely.
But they opened, you know, in the first week of the season, the Frisco schools played a district game, excuse me, that very first week because of the way things were set up with the Star opening last year, and they won that game. So they're already 1-0 in district, so they've got a jump start on making the playoffs. I think if Reedy makes the playoffs this year, that's an overwhelming success. You make it in your second year, that's fantastic.
And that's we keep talking about all these Frisco high school football teams playing at a high level, playing against some of the best talent in the DFW Metroplex area. How is that possible when you have 8 schools in it is a large, you know, suburban area, but you compare it to Allen, and Allen's a large suburban area, but they've got 1 high school.
Right.
So how are they able to compete at such a high level with 8 different schools and not spreading themselves too thin with talent?
Well, I think that was one of the criticisms, if you would say, when Frisco was talking about what their model was going to be. Hey, we're going to have a lot of schools. We're going to not go for that 6A. We're going to be the second tier. We're not going to be like Allen, which has 6,000 kids. We're going to get our schools to about 2,000. That's what they're doing. So a lot of people said, well, you know, that maybe there's a lot of positives about that, but on the other hand, you're watering down your talent. Are you going to be successful? Well, I think at this point, the Frisco schools have shown they can be successful. And not just talking football. They've been really good in, you know, they've won swimming state titles. They've won soccer. They've been really good in volleyball. They were a state runner-up in girls basketball recently. And then 2 years ago, Lone Star was the state runner-up in football. You know, so many people put so much into football. And I mean, when you talk about this year, they've got a lot of Reedy in their second year is doing well. Frisco Wakeland is 4-0, and I think that's probably the other team in football that's probably close to the tier of where Lone Star is. I think Lone Star is kind of the class of the district right now, but Wakeland could probably challenge them for that spot. There are a lot of good teams out there, and I think Frisco, the school district, you know, all the teams in general are proving week in and week out and in multiple sports that they can compete, you know, with their, if you want to call it a small school model, even though it's 2,000 kids. It's not tiny schools, but compared to some of the monster schools
No, if you
around
compare it, Highland Park is not that much bigger.
Right.
Honestly, they moved up to 6A, but they're one of the smallest schools in 6A.
Back in 5A now.
Oh, they're back in 5A
back in
now.
5A
Okay,
now,
so
yeah.
that was probably a little bit above their competition level
That's
when
right.
they're competing
They
against
became one of the
Allen.
smallest schools in 6A, and now they're one of the larger schools
In 5A. And it's hard for them to grow because they're pretty much landlocked in terms of space. Frisco still has plenty of room to develop. What do you see in the future of FISD for, I mean, we can talk about football, but let's just talk about the school district in terms of sports in general.
Well, I think the plan is, and of course plans change, but the plan that is in place is to have, you know, right now they have 9 high schools that are open. 8 of them are playing varsity sports. They already have a 10th one built, and I believe the plans are for at least 12 high schools because they want to keep them in that same model where they're around 2,000, something like that, in that second tier, second largest tier, and the school district keeps growing. So the only way you can do that is you got to build more schools or you got to bump these ones up and make them bigger. And I think their plan is to have more schools. And I think as it is right now, they've shown that if we're talking about athletic achievement, I don't think that's a barrier from having, you know, athletic champions. They've already shown it, and they're going to have more talented kids coming into the district, and then they're just going to have more schools. And I think it's going to be a really great competitive landscape. And if you're talking about right now, they already have their own district with 8 schools.
Right.
But you get up to like 12 schools, I mean, suddenly like city championship really means something special because that's a lot of schools.
Yeah, in fact, we're looking at the schedule that they've already played. Most of the games have been out of district.
Right.
Right. So next we're going to actually get into some as we're coming into in-district games, and maybe a little bit more preview of what the rest of the season looks like, and also a preview of, like you're talking about, how expanding the school district could be beneficial to Frisco and especially Frisco high school football.